Hello. In this tutorial for Code.org AppLab environment, we're going to learn how to make a character move around on a scrolling screen. Now it's important to understand that this character is not actually moving. The character is staying still, but the background is moving around, which makes it appear that the character is moving. One limitation we have to this is a character can never move to the edge of the screen because the character is always staying centered, and if we move the picture too far up, we see a bunch of white space here. If you're going to be adapting this code for one of your own projects for school, please make sure to check with your teacher about the proper way to cite any code you use. The first thing we need to do is create a new project. So I'm at a website, studio.code.org. I'm already logged in, so I'm going to go to Create, and I'm going to create an AppLab program. I'm just going to hit F11 to full screen it. So let's start by setting up our environment. So I'm going to go to the Design tab, and right now the first screen is named Screen 1. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to name it Screen_First. So now we've got to import two images. We've got to import our background image, and then we've got to import our character image. So I'm going to grab an image, and then I'm going to rename the ID image_ninja, because our character is going to be a ninja. Then I'm going to go to Choose. I'm going to go to Upload File. I'm going to copy and paste the path I need. So I'm going to select Ninja, and then I'm going to choose the Ninja asset. Now we can see there's some white area around the edge of the ninja. Now sometimes this can be just the way the image is created, but in this case it's because we forced it into a square with a width of 100 and a height of 100. And we want the dotted lines to be right on the edge of the character. So there's two ways we can do it. We can either grab and kind of resize it. Like I said, if you can't resize it so the dots go right on the edge of the character, then that probably means there's some white space and you need to crop your image. Another option we can do is we can figure out what the length and width of the original image is and just type that in here. So let's go to my folder, and then this is Windows. I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to go to Properties, and then I'm going to go to Details, and I'm going to see, the width is 70 pixels, the height is 97 pixels. So I'm going to select my character again. Width is 70 pixels, and what was the height again? The height was, details, 97 pixels. And there we go, and then it's right along the border. Okay, next what we need to do is we need to import our background. So I'm going to grab another image, and then I'm going to name this image_background, and then I'm going to go to Choose. And I'm going to upload my file again. Then I'm going to select Forest Path, smaller, and I'm going to choose it. Now you can see this is much too small, plus we've got these white borders, and that's going to cause a problem if we leave them on there later on. So let's look and see what the file size was originally. Let's go back here. Let's right click on Forest Path, smaller, Properties, and then we see the details. It is 900 by 1882. So click on that again. 900 width by 1882 height. Now if we want, we could change the width and the height manually. However, we want to make sure we keep the same aspect ratio. So if we cut the width in half to say 450, then we need to cut the height in half, which would give us 941. That'll make sure the aspect ratio stays the same and we don't have white borders. And then we want to drag it so the upper left-hand corner is right in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. So we won't be able to see most of it, and that's okay. Now we see the ninja is hidden behind it. So we've got to move this background image to the background. So again, we select, move that back there. We have the image selected. Let's scroll down here under Properties. And then the depth, we're just going to hit this here to send it to the back. And there we go. So this is the furthest back, and now we've got our ninja on top. These pieces of art were purchased from a website called Game Dev Market. However, if you want to learn how to get free art for your games, click on the link in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. So, let's close out our toolbox, and now we're ready to go and do some coding. Before we start coding, we're going to name the project. This is really something you should do as soon as you create it, because it makes it easier to find if you are looking through your projects. So I'm going to go to rename. I'm going to make it scrolling background project. So now we're going to go back to code. I'm going to close the toolbox for now because I don't need these right now. So this will give me a little more space to type code. I'm in the text mode. You can do this in the block mode too. I find it easier to do it in the text mode. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create some global variables. Global variables are variables that are declared outside any function, and they're accessible inside any function in the program. So we'll start by saying var, var, screen width, and we'll set it equal to 320. So this is going to be the same for everybody's program because these screens are 320 pixels wide. Then we're going to make var screen height, and we're going to set the height to 450. And again, that's going to be the same for everybody because everybody's screen is 450 pixels high. Now we're going to get the background width. Now this is going to depend a little bit on what you named your image. So we're going to say var background width, and we'll set it equal to. Now we're going to grab the get property. So we're going to go to get property. We're going to drag it in here, and we could type this out if we prefer. Let's get that on the same line. So we're going to go to the beginning of the line, hit backspace, and then it goes up there. So the ID we want is we want to know the width of this image. So I named mine image underscore background. So inside these quotation marks, I'm going to say image underscore background. And let's make sure it's taking the right property. So it's taking the width property, which is what we want. And then I'm going to end it with a semicolon there. And then let's close that out so we can see our entire line of code. All right, next we're going to go to the next line. We're going to make another global variable, var background height. And we're going to set it equal to, I'm just going to copy and paste this. So I'm going to select it all. I'm going to do Control C for copy, Control V for paste. So we also want to get image background, but in this case the property we want is height. And you got to make sure both of these things, both of these arguments are inside of quotation marks. All right. Next global variable we're going to make is var hero speed, and I'm going to set mine equal to 4. You can change this depending on how quickly or slowly you want your character to move around. But this just means every frame is going to move the character 4 pixels. Now, one thing you notice as we're doing this is we're start getting warnings. So I'm going to highlight this, and it says hero speed is defined, but it's not called in your program. That's just fine because we haven't used it yet. So a yellow triangle, we want to check it out, but it may or may not be a problem. In this case, it's not a problem. We'll use it later. So notice this was checked. I'm just going to uncheck that so it doesn't stop. That's part of the debugging. Okay, our next one is we're going to make 4 Boolean variables. So a Boolean variable is a variable that holds a value of either true or false. So we're going to say var move left, and we'll set it equal to false right now. So this is going to keep track if we are currently moving left. Then we're going to say var move right, and we'll set it equal to false. Then var move up equal false, and var move down equal to false. So right now it's not moving in any direction. Now 2 of these could be true at the same time. For example, we could be moving left and up. And in that case, move left would be set to true and move up would be set to true. So it'd be moving left and up at the same time. And we'll look at that more later. So now that we've created all of these global variables, we're going to start on our first event listener. So next what we're going to do is we're going to create an event listener that will listen for when we press down on an arrow key, and then if we're pressing down on an arrow key, it's going to change the value of these variables to true. So let's go down a couple of lines. We're going to open up our toolbox. We're going to go to UI controls, and we're going to grab on event. We're going to put it in there, and it put it in there for us. So let's close this toolbox. So on event. Now, what ID are we listening for? Well, we want to see if we're on screen first. So you may not have called your screen first. If you called yours something else, you'll put that in here. So when screen underscore first, when there's a key down. So key down. So that means some key on the keyboard is pressed. Now next, we've got this anonymous callback function. We call it an anonymous function because it doesn't have a name. Usually our functions have names. Also, we call it a callback function because it's run automatically whenever this event is triggered. And this event is triggered whenever a key down is pressed, a key is pressed, and we're on screen first. So let's put inside these parentheses here, event. So whatever key is pressed will go into this parameter here. Okay. So now we're going to go inside the function here. So the function starts at this opening curly bracket and ends at that curly bracket. And unlike traditional functions that would just end at the curly bracket, since this is a callback function, we've also got that close parentheses and the semicolon there. So let's grab an if. I'm just going to type this out. So I'm going to say if event.key. So that's our event, and we're going to take what key was the event, and we're going to say double equals quote unquote right, and that's right with a capital R. So if the event, the key that was pressed is the right key, it's going to execute some code. So we're going to make some opening and closing curly brackets. So if this is true, it'll execute the code in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to change this global variable, move right, is going to become true because the right key has been pressed down. So we're going to do the same with the other ones. If event.key double equals, because double equals checks to see if two or things are equal. Single equals is setting something equal. Double equals, or in JavaScript, triple equals, will check if they're equal. And there's a little difference between double and triple equals. Don't worry about that for now. For now, we're just going to use double equals. So if the key that was pressed was left, so we're going to make another set of curly brackets. And then we're going to change the move left variable equal to true. Now we'll go outside this set of curly brackets because these curly brackets are tied to this if. Notice we're still inside the curly brackets for our function here because we want all of this to be part of our function. So we'll say if event.key double equals up. Then we open our curly brackets. It closed it out for us there. We're going to say move up equals true. Then again, another if statement. If event.key equals down, open our curly brackets. Let's scroll down a little bit. And then we will set move down to true. So now let's try making a couple mistakes and seeing if it flags anything for us. So double equals or triple equals in JavaScript will check if two things are equal. Now, what if we accidentally put a single equals? So we're trying to check if it's equal, but we're using single equals, which is using to set something equal. Well, let's see. It gave us a warning. Let's see what it says. And it says, for conditionals, use the comparison operator triple equals to check. So we're going to use double equals. We could use triple equals in some circumstances. To learn the difference between double equals and triple equals in JavaScript and AppLab, please click on the link in the upper right-hand corner of this screen. All right, double equals. Now, let's see here, we're trying to set move right to true. So let's see if we set this to double equals. So this would be checking if these are equal, not setting it equal. So in this case, it doesn't actually give us a flag, but it's not going to do what we want. So we got to keep an eye on these things. So let's scroll down and take a look at this. So whenever we press down one of our arrow keys, it's going to set the corresponding global variable to true. Now we want to make it where when we lift up our finger off that key, it sets these back to false. So we're going to actually copy and paste this event listener, and we're going to make a couple minor changes. So we're going to select it all. We're going to do Control-C, go down a few lines, and then Control-V to paste it. So in this case, we don't want key down. We want to detect when key up. And instead of setting move right and move left and move up to true, we want to set it to false. If the key's up, we're not trying to move in these directions. So there we go. We've got an event listener that's going to detect when we press down a key, and an event listener that's going to detect when we press up a key. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a function that's actually going to move the background. Let's go down to the bottom here. Let's make some more lines of code. And we'll start up here. Now we're going to create a function. We could grab the function from the toolbox, but I'm just going to type it out. So I'm going to say function. We're going to call it move. Then open close parentheses. Then our opening and then our closing curly brackets. Now you can see, unlike the anonymous function, this one actually has a name. This is called move. And then when we want to call it, we will just call move with the open close parentheses. Alright, so first we're going to create a local variable inside this function. So we're going to say var background x. Now a local variable is created every time we run the function, and it's destroyed every time the function ends. And it's only accessible inside this function here. Now what we're going to set background x to is what the current position of this image is, because we want to make sure we don't move it too far, because then we'll see the white space behind the image. We're going to go to show toolbox. We're going to go to UI controls, and we're going to get the X position. Here we go, get X position. Now we want to get the X position of this image, and we can see this image is called image underscore background. So we're going to say here image underscore background, and then we're going to end that with a semicolon. Now we need to get the Y position too, so we're going to make another local variable, var background Y equals, and we're going to do get Y position. Now I could have just dragged the get Y position, but in this case I'm going to type it out. And then we'll say image underscore background, and then end it with a semicolon again. Now we've got some flags here. Let's take a look at them. So this one's warning us that we've created a variable, but we haven't used it yet. And that's okay, because we're going to use it later. Let's look at this one under function. It says move is defined, but it's not called in your program. And that's okay, because we're going to call move later on. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to check if two things are true. If we're trying to move left, and we know we're trying to move left if move left is set to true, and also if we can move left without taking the image off the screen. So, if we move it too far left, then we start seeing the white space because there's white, just a white background there. So we're going to say if move left, so that's if the move left variable is true, and so we use the double ampersands, background x is less than or equal to negative hero speed. Now if that is, then what we're going to do, we're going to open and close another set of curly brackets. Let's move that up there. And we're going to set background x equal to background x plus hero speed. Okay, that's our first if. Now we're going to do another one. We're going to check if the move right variable is set to true and background x greater than screen width minus background width plus hero speed. Then we'll open our curly bracket again. And if that's true, we're going to set background x equal to background x minus hero speed. So we're going to move it in the other direction. Then a third if, we'll say if move up is true. Now another way you could do it is you could do double equals true. This is equivalent to just saying move up. But there's really no reason to do this since move up is already containing a true or false value. So it's a little simpler just to say like move up. Move up and background y is less than 0 minus hero speed. Then we'll open our curly brackets. Let's scroll down a little bit. Background y equals background y plus hero speed. And end that with a semicolon. And then our final if our move down variable is true, and background y is greater than screen height minus background height plus hero speed. We'll open our curly brackets. And inside, we'll change background y equal to background y minus hero speed. So it's important to understand we actually haven't changed the location yet. We've just calculated what the new location should be. So now we're going to move our background to that new location. So we're going to go to Show Toolbox, and we're going to grab Set Position. And you can see there's 5 arguments here. So the first one is, what do we want to be moving? Well, we want to be moving image underscore background. Okay, where do we want to move it to? We want to move it to background X. And that's the X location we want to move it to. Then the Y location we want to move it to is background Y. Now these last two are what are the height and width we want it to be. Now we want to leave it as it is, so we're actually going to get rid of this. Because you can actually call set position with either 3 arguments like this, or 5 arguments if you want to change the size as you're moving it. And we don't want to change the size, so we're just going to have these 3 arguments here. Okay, let's move this over so you can see it better. Okay, so now we have our move function. Now, the move function is not going to do anything until we call it. So the final thing we're going to do is we're going to create a timed loop that's going to periodically call the move function. The move function will check, does it need to move based on, the value of these Boolean variables and whether we can move it without, pushing it too far off the screen. So we're going to go down here and we're going to create a timed loop. So we're going to go back to our toolbox. We're going to go to Control, and we're going to do a timed loop. So what this time loop does here is every 1,000 milliseconds, which is 1 second, it runs this anonymous function. Now we want it to call it more than every 1 second because that's going to look laggy. So I'm going to set mine to 20 milliseconds. Now you can change this. If you make it less than 20 milliseconds, it'll be a little faster. If you make it more than 20 milliseconds, it may be a little bit slower. But there's a minimum you can get it down to because, the computer's got to be able to keep up. So every 20 milliseconds, we're going to call the move function. So I said move, open, close parentheses, and then we ended with a semicolon. So let's run it and see what happens. So I accidentally opened the debugger. So let's close that down there. Let's hit run. And then let's move. Okay, we're moving this way, moving this way, moving that way. Now I can move diagonally if I have 2 buttons pressed at the same time. And there we go. Now I want to speed this up a little bit. So, I could try playing with this, but 20 milliseconds is already pretty fast. So I'm going to have the move the hero a little more each time it's called. So I'm going to change this to 6. And then I'm going to reset, run, and then see now the character is moving faster because every time move is called, it moves at 6 pixels instead of 4 pixels. So that is how you have a character move around on a scrolling background. To see the next video in this sequence, please click on the video link in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. And to see the entire sequence of videos, please click on the video in the lower right-hand corner of the screen.